Just so that in the future when somebody looks at this tape and I'm not around, can you just say your name and spell it for me?
Yes, my name is Michael Edwards, and it's Michaeledwards.
Okay. Conventional spelling.
Yep, pretty simple. Nothing.
Okay.
MYKL.
Okay. So why don't you tell me how the Jekyll and Hyde fan club got started? How the Jekkies got started?
Well, it was kind of strange. It started off as an internet thing, I think, more than anything else. There were just several people had seen the show. People started contacting each other on the internet. Philip Hoffman was really big on that. He used to play Utterson on the tour back in 1990, and started getting some people together on the internet. And over the course of months, as the show started going on tour, more people started to meet. I had met another person out here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that was into the show, and we went to Houston, saw the show, met Frank Wildhorn again, and had talked with him and a few other people about doing a fan club and doing a newsletter for it, which we ended up doing. You know, it's now gone in several different directions, but they kind of gave us their blessing and said anything they could do to help, you know, they do, and they did. And so we had a really fun, run with it there for a while. And of course now it's changing and becoming a different kind of a fan club, but very simple.
How many people do you think started?
Well, when it was on the internet, I know that we must have had over 200 people, as just an internet thing now, which again, I didn't start that. That was started, and I kind of came in on that a little later. It was just like a mailing list, and there was well over 200 people on that. The fan club itself, we got well over 100 people on it. And now as it's growing in its other form, I don't know the exact numbers, but I know that it's growing quite a bit, and I know it's definitely getting into the hundreds of people. So it's growing pretty quick.
Well, when was the first time you saw Jekyll and Hyde?
First time I saw Jekyll and Hyde was back in 1990 in Houston. I lived in Dallas at the time. I drove out to Houston and saw it out there with Chuck Wagner and Linda Eder and Rebecca Spencer. And actually met quite a few of the people then. But the show was incredible even back then. A much simpler version than what it is now. But it made me go back to see it, 3 more times. I drove out to Houston 4 times to go see it because I just thought it was so good.
What was it about the show?
Well, first and foremost, it was the music. The music was very haunting. It was just, it get into your head, and you just couldn't get rid of it. You go home humming the tunes, and 6 weeks later, you're still humming the tunes and wishing that you had a CD of it or something so you could listen to it. It was mostly the music, and then the performances were so strong, and the staging for being on such a small stage at that time was very interesting and very well done, and it grabbed you. You cared about the characters, and it shocked you. And it was a lot of good laughs. It was really good entertainment, and you ran through every emotion as you saw the show. So it was very fulfilling.
Now, how many times have you seen the show as of now?
Okay. Now that it's on Broadway, much less than some people. I've seen it 15 times, but I've seen it, I'm one of the few people that have probably seen it in just about every incarnation. There was one run that I didn't see that they did in New York as a workshop. But I've seen like 3 or 4 different versions of the show, and of course every time I saw it, since it was in workshop and on the tour and they were changing it, every single time I've seen it, it's been a different show. There's been something different that they've changed, and it just keeps getting better.
Very good. That was very good. Let's see how many points. What's your favorite moment in the show?
Whew,
You
that's.
can think about it if you want.
Yeah, actually, that's really difficult because unfortunately one of my favorite parts of the show, you got to kind of wonder why it's my favorite part of the show, and I'm afraid that I'd give something away, but it's the death of a character, and it's just a very powerful scene, and so I say it's my favorite only because it's such a powerfully emotional scene, and it just it makes you cry. I mean, it brings tears to your eyes, and it's so powerful. It makes it my favorite, I guess, and I don't know if I should say what the scene is because I don't want to necessarily give it away to people that haven't seen the show.
All right, well, let's go at it this way. Do you have a favorite song, or would the song be from that same scene?
No, I definitely do have a different song. Okay.
What's your favorite song from the show?
I'd have to say my favorite song from the show is A Dangerous Game, because it is an incredibly seductive song, and it's I mean, I don't know if I should say this, but it's a turn on to hear the song. It's just there's so much emotion there, and so much. Using the term seductive again, it's a very seductive song. You listen to it, and it's the way it moves and the way it flows. I think men and women both go, it's just it hits you. So that's probably my favorite song in the show.
Okay. Um, who do you have a favorite performer in the show, or a favorite character?
Well, without being too obvious, it's going to be Jekyll and Hyde. It's just that is a great character or characters. I think anybody that can pull off being able to play two totally different characters like that, it's impressive to watch. And I've never seen anybody do it badly. Every actor, and I've seen 3 different people perform it, and every single one of them have just done it incredibly. And I wouldn't want to say that one is necessarily better than another. Some have done certain parts better than others, but overall they were great. But the lead, I'd like to pick somebody smaller like the newsboy, but it'd have to be the lead. It's definitely my favorite.
Tell me about your trip to New York to see Jekyll and Hyde.
Well, when I went to New York to go see the previews of Jekyll and Hyde, that was the first trip that my fiancée Sally and I had made to New York. Neither one of us had ever been there before. And but we knew we wanted to be there for this. So we went. We made a trip for 8 days. And while we were there, we got to meet a lot of the other Jekkies, the other fans, people I'd only known on the internet, people I'd written to. But so we got to meet a lot of them. We saw the show 3 times while we were there. Even actually spent the night. We were the first people to spend the night on the streets of New York to get tickets, to get rush tickets in the morning. There had been people that get there at 4 o'clock in the morning. We got there at 10 o'clock. The show wasn't even over from the night before. And as a lark, I mean, we didn't do it because, we're so into the show, we have to do this. We just thought it'd be fun and something funny to do. So we brought some sleeping bags and blankets, and we spent the night on the streets of New York outside the theater and waited for it to open up in the morning so we could buy our front row seat tickets. It was quite an enjoyable experience. A lot of people came up to us and offered us money. They thought we were homeless, I guess. I didn't think we looked that bad, but it was an exciting trip, and I love New York. And I'm now trying to find ways to move there because it's such a great theater town. And Dallas, Fort Worth, not a whole lot of theater going on here really. That's good, and Broadway's where I really want to be.
Okay.
Talkative.
No. I was going to ask you though, how does somebody in Dallas, Fort Worth, get interested in a show like Jekyll and Hyde?
Well, I think it's because of the fact that it really got its start in Houston, which is so much closer. I was already interested in the story. I've been a fan of horror for a long time, and that's not true horror necessarily, but Jekyll and Hyde's always been Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde's always been a favorite story of mine. And since it started in Houston with its workshops, and I heard that it was going to be there, I just went to go see it. And not having any major expectations of coming away going, wow, that was really wonderful. But then ending up coming away saying, wow, that was really wonderful. And, I think if it had started in New York first, I think after I would have heard the music, I would have probably still gotten into it. I don't know. I can't honestly say that I would have gotten into it as much as I am now. Because then I got to see it several times. I got to meet a lot of the people, and got to feel like an outside part of it, and being there from the beginning. So, if it hadn't started here first, I don't know if I'd still love it, I'm sure, but I don't know that I would have been as involved as I've been.
Right. Okay. Well, let's get back to the Jekkies a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
When the Jekkies go to a show, what do they do?
Enjoy it like everybody else. They often meet, have dinner, go to see the show. Now, not actually living in New York, I don't get to join them as often as I'd like. There's definitely a lot of ovations. Probably a little extra thunderous applause after certain songs or certain scenes. They'll egg it on a little bit, and of course the rest of the audience will join in. But there'll be probably a little more hooting and hollering. A little more wooing than there would necessarily be if there wasn't any in the audience. And certainly the more that are there, the more festive it's going to become. So 1 or 2 might not make as much noise, but you get a whole group there, you'll know they're there.
Well, who started calling them the Jekkies, do you know?
Yes, actually. It was, I have to think of the reporter's name.
That's okay, take a second.
It was, let me think. I think it was Lori, I don't know if it's Weiner. I think it's Lori Weiner.
If you want to just say a reporter.
Okay, yeah, it's just, okay, so if you want
a reporter from here? Or?
No, it was a reporter out of Los Angeles. Or out of California, I should say, because I'm not sure if it was Los Angeles. I've got the article.
Okay, well, let me ask you again.
Okay.
Do you know who started calling the group the Jekkies?
The first time that I'd ever seen the term anywhere was a reporter out in California had written a story that had basically said, like, move over Trekkies, now we have Jekkies, and so the term kind of got coined, I believe, there, and it just kind of caught on. And at first, some of us were going, that's I don't know, that's a little, fan sounding, but it just kind of caught on, and the actors in the show and the people involved in the show caught on to it and started referring to us as that, and so it just stuck, and so we've been Jekkies ever since.
Now, sometimes the performers acknowledge the group, right?
Oh, yeah.
In this, tell me about that. Like, if you're in the audience after the performance, what might a performer do to acknowledge you guys, or one of your better stories about them?
Let me clear my throat here for a second. And well, to give you, I guess, an example of when we were there, one of the last shows that we saw before we came back home, we sat in the front row. There were 3 of us. Each one of us had a rose, and we waited. And as soon as everybody was done taking all their bows, everybody stepped forward, and my friend Mark handed a rose to Christiane. Sally handed one to Rob Evan, who was playing the part, and I handed one to Linda Eder. And they were just like flabbergasted. They didn't know what the show was still really new on Broadway at that point. They didn't know what to do. It was like, oh, okay, but they recognized us. They knew who we were, and so they were just like, like waving to us. Now, as the performers know that somebody's in the audience, which usually it's if they're kind of in the front row, is when it's most noticeable because they'll recognize faces. Generally they'll wave or do something. There was a case where Robert Cuccioli had given away his hat to somebody who was like talking to him after the show. He had a Jekyll and Hyde hat and he gave it away. And so a couple of the fans felt bad that he gave his hat away because this person was kind of bugging him for it. And so they went during intermission, bought him a new hat, and gave it to him. So when he came out for his bow, he came out and he took the hat and did this with it, put it on, and walked off and kind of acknowledged them that way. And everybody said it was great, and everybody was yelling and cheering, and it was really fun. I wish I was there for that, but I heard about that story, and so there's little winks, waves, all kinds of things now.
Winks and waves.
Never during the show though, only after.
That's good. That's good. What else? Do you want to talk about the music at all? About Wildhorn and how much you like him?
Sure.
Or, what is it about Frank Wildhorn's music?
I think the main thing about Frank Wildhorn's music is that it's very heartfelt music. You listen to it and a lot. Okay. Okay, that one went really well, and that's the one they're going to use. The thing about Frank Wildhorn's music is that it is very heartfelt. There's a lot of emotion behind it. You listen to it, and the way the melodies flow, you can't help but kind of lose yourself in it. You feel something, and it's probably true of a lot of music, different types of music. But his hits a very broad spectrum. There's people that call it, pop music. Well, of course, that's not a bad thing. Pop is just popular music. Frank says that all the time, and that's true. And there's nothing wrong with music on Broadway being popular, because if it's popular, it's going to draw people in to see it. They'll listen to it, they'll hear it on the radio, they'll hear it at the Olympics, they'll hear it in other places, and that's going to interest them. So that's a good thing. It's open to a lot of different people. It doesn't necessarily just make itself known to just teenagers or just older people. It's music that anybody can listen to and go, wow, I really like that. That moves really great, and it gets inside you, and you can't forget it. You can't forget it. The tunes are very catchy, which that's a bad term to use, catchy, but it is. They're very catchy. You remember the lyrics, you remember the music. Very powerful stuff.
No,
Oh, okay. I was just.
Okay, I don't want you to start. I was thinking.
Wait, we gotta stand by?
Okay.
Just be careful, I'm hearing you react.
Okay. I was trying not to.
Okay.
I had something I was going to ask you about
Mhm.
Well, do you think that that you'll be going to see Jekyll and Hyde 10, 15 years from now? That it'll be playing somewhere,
I think so. And certainly if it is playing, I will go to see it. Of course, certainly I'd rather be in it, but that's a whole other story right there. But yeah, absolutely. I think that it's got some staying power, and I think it's still going to be playing in some form. Whether or not it's still on Broadway, who knows? I'd like to think that it will be. I imagine it'll still be around in touring form. It's starting to open up around the world now. I don't see how it could not, it's like a steamroller right now, and it's not losing steam at all. It's moving ahead and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I don't see how it couldn't still be around in 10 or 15 years. It's got to be.
How often do the Jekkies get together?
There's little, most of the people live in New York. They'll get together, occasionally every few weeks. I hear things, I read things. Down here in this area in Dallas-Fort Worth, there's quite a few fans down here, and we get together every few months, and we'll, listen to music or watch videotapes or just talk about the show or talk about the other projects that they're working on and talk about our lives, talk about what we're doing. And we get together, and it's just like we fellowship, I guess is what you can call it. And but as far as like a real big net together, most of those they seem to be around a big event like an anniversary. We're hoping to actually have a big net together when they premiere Civil War, which is another show that Frank Wildhorn did that Greg Boyd's directing, that they're going to be premiering in Houston later this year. And we're hoping to have a big get together, and it's still going to be Jekkies, but it's people that have are really just into Frank Wildhorn's music, and we're planning a net together around that. We're probably going to have a net together sometime around Linda Edder's last performance, which is going to be around, I believe, August 30th, which that's one I'm hoping I'm going to get to go to. So they tend to schedule themselves around a big event, a big milestone in the course of the show.
And you call them net-togethers?
Net-togethers because most of the people met on the internet. And that's where, the major part of the fan club, the first mailing list, that's where everything kind of started. And that's how everybody keeps in contact. And so it's a net together from the internet.
Is there anything you think I've missed? Anything you want to talk about the group, or about the actual Jekkies? Is there anything I'm missing about them?
I don't know. They're rabid. Can you think of anything?
Do people dress up? Do you want to tell me about?
Now I've of our groups. Of our groups, the people that I know of, I don't know of anybody actually dressing up. People wear Jekyll and Hyde shirts and stuff, but I had heard stories back when it was on tour of people that, I've never met these people, but supposedly there were people that had shown up for the show dressed up. I have never personally seen anybody do that and have never really heard of that. It was mentioned in a couple of interviews that the actors have had. Some people showed up dressed up, but I don't know that it's any of our group. I don't know if you want to touch on this at all, but one of the things that I thought was really interesting, because I've never seen this happen before, that had to do with the Jekkies, was the Tony Awards, which there was like a big hullabaloo, that seems, about the Jekkies, that because of the fact that Jekyll and Hyde wasn't nominated for Best Musical, and it in fact only got just like I think 3 or 4 nominations, that there was going to be a big picket of the Tony Awards, that everyone's going to show up with signs and they're going to picket and they're going to be out in the lobby of the Tony Awards, because it was a big net together for that, and they're going to like badmouth the Tonys and everything. And so everybody was like, it was all over the news. It was in every newspaper. I was getting articles. It was on TV. I have videotapes where they're talking about this, how we're gonna take over the Tony Awards, and we're gonna just like, we're so mad, and nobody had any intention of doing that whatsoever. It was mentioned once or twice in passing as a joke, I think, in talking, and it just took off, and it became the biggest news event of the Tony Awards, was the fact that the Jekkies were going to pick it. I'm like, please, and they had no, we were getting, little pleas from like Wildhorn Productions, like, please don't do that. And I was like, we're not going to, we have no intention. And they didn't. They went, they had a nice time, and they left. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of an interesting thing, because that was a big event with the Tony Awards. So I don't know if that's anything that you would want to know about, but it was a big news event. The Jekkies are now famous because we've made Jeopardy. We were a question on Jeopardy. They said fans of this show are known as Jekkies, and of course, and the question was, what is Jekyll and Hyde? And so we're now part of Americana as being a question on Jeopardy. We're everywhere. Oh, great. Oh, great. Oh, no.
That was great.
That's like the last thing I wanted to do. Oh, no.
That was really good.
Oh,
well,
how embarrassing.
Let me
Okay.
ask you this. Touring companies must have come through here in the past with, Cats,
Mm-hmm.
things like, I'm trying to think what other shows must have come through here, but why Jekyll and Hyde and not those? Why aren't you, a cat, or why aren't you,
Well, that's hard to say, because I do like a lot of other shows. I really love Les Miserables. I love Phantom of the Opera. I love The Sound of Music. I love musicals just in general. I don't think I've ever seen one I didn't like. I saw this pre-tour, and then I got to see it on the tour. And I think I'd have to say a big part of, I think, what really drew me into it was the people involved with the show, because they were so nice. They were approachable. There wasn't anybody in the cast or crew that you couldn't talk to, and they'd see you if they'd seen you before, and they'd come out, "Hey, Michael, how are you doing? Good to see you." And they're very friendly and very open. Nobody's all closed. And not to say that they're like that in other shows, but I think just because of my personal experience with these people, that's what drew me even closer to the show as far as my enjoyment of it. And I have so many memories of it now because I've gotten to go backstage. I've gotten to sit and eat dinner with actors and talk to them about the show. I've been given things, which is really nice, little gifts and stuff. So I think that's the personal part of it for me, and that's what's drawn me even closer to it than other shows. That personal touch.
Are any of your Jekkie friends, have they become like your real friends, your best friends?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Actually, one of the first ones that became a good friend of mine was Dr. Richie Schwartz, who's now running the fan club. And he and I have become really good friends. Mark Goldman, who runs it with him now, and they all live up in New York and New Jersey. And they're both running the fan club now. I've become great friends. Mark has come down to the Dallas-Fort Worth area like 2 or 3 times now, and we visit. We drive to Houston together to go see Greg Boyd. So yeah, we talk, we email. Yeah, we become very, very good friends. We're probably closer than most of my friends here in DFW.
Well, that's great. I think we've probably covered the fan club, this side of it. But now what we want you to do, and we'll have to reconfigure, I think.